everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with Jay Taylor, and today we're at the Liberty Mastermind Symposium, and your talk was, I really liked your talk.
Thank you.
And you talked about how debasing currency might have a correlation with the morality of a society.
Right.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, sure. I think that, in fact, it was a history professor that I had back in 1967 who suggested that was true. He looked at history and thought that was true. So I started watching what was going on in 1967, 68, 69, the Vietnam War, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, and I saw that, we were printing money to pay for it, and we weren't going to tax the people and tell people that the war was going to cost them, that they were going to have to pay for the Great Society, but they could have something for nothing. And so that always, I think most of the time, a lot of people will, if you offer them something for nothing, they'll take you up on it. And that's what I think the whole system has been. We've seen, of course, then the enormous growth in the money supply. Following that, of course, in 1971, Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard, and he did that because he didn't want to tax the people that pay for Vietnam. He didn't want to tax the people that pay for the Great Society. If he did that, he'd probably be tossed out of office. And so we did. I mean, we issued debt to pay for those things, and then the printing press to pay for it because they didn't want to tax people. So if you look at a chart, you go back to about 1971 or so, you see an exponential growth in the money supply in the United States. We did debase the currency. We did see all kinds of other sort of, I think, social declines in many ways. I think it might even transcend the economics and the work ethic, I think, because when people think they can have something for nothing, they start applying that to other areas of their lives. And so people think they can have maybe sexual freedom and so forth without any repercussions. And I think just people think they can sort of take advantage of each other, and especially if you're empowered with a lot of money. If you happen to be in those sectors of the society that benefit from fiat money, that would be like bankers and government and so forth, are really taking away the wealth that's being created by, I like to say, the people that really create wealth are the miners, the manufacturers, the farmers, the inventors, people that do things that are really valuable. They aren't getting their fair share, and there's a redistribution of wealth from the producers to the people that sort of control the system. So I think Dr. Yoder was right. I think that we've seen a lot of, now whether that was the cause of it or not, I mean, it's interesting. I had Robert Prechter on my radio show one time, and I asked Robert Prechter, I said, suppose that Nixon hadn't taken us off the gold standard in 1971, would we be in this mess we're in today? And his answer was very interesting. He said, yes, but Nixon didn't have a choice. And I said, why is that? He said, because if Nixon had not shut down the gold standard, then he would have been tossed out of office. The people were demanding an easier life. So it's sort of a chicken and egg question, I guess. If you get rid of a gold standard, honest money, then what you do is make it easy for dishonesty to occur in the society. But on the other hand, if people are demanding that, then, what is the initial problem? I think it's really in the hearts and minds of people. If they don't want to be honest, or they're not trying to be honest, they want to get something for nothing. I think it's sort of natural, but it doesn't work very long in the long run.
So if people continue to keep wanting something for nothing, and the Fed just keeps printing and printing, where do you see this going?
Well, I think we're getting very close to a very cataclysmic end, unfortunately. What we've seen is the debt has grown something like 360% total debt in the U.S. to GDP. So we are basically an insolvent society. Sooner or later, the debts, we're going to run into, I think, an implosion. I really fear deflation. I think the system wants to deflate because it's insolvent. It can't pay, there's not enough GDP, not enough income to pay the debt, to service the debt. So what we're doing is printing more and more money, which means creating more and more debt, because debt, really, I like to say that debt is the raw material from which money is manufactured in the fiat currency system, as opposed to an asset-based system where you have to dig it out of the ground. That's money, gold or silver traditionally, and other real assets. Yeah, I think what's happening is we're not going to be able to solve. I think we're going to have a breakdown in the system. I think, we started to see it in 2008, 2009. They managed to salvage it for now. But in the process of doing so, they've made the ultimate decline even worse, I think, because the debt is even far greater than it was in 2008, 2009. That is, debt relative to income is worse than it ever was. So I think I think the system is going to fail, and that could lead to a lot of chaos and a lot of unhappiness and perhaps a revolution.
So do you see this collapse having any impact on our liberty? We're at the Liberty Mastermind Symposium. How do you see this affecting our liberty?
Well, I think it's already affecting our liberty because I think the system, the policymakers are very much aware that people are hurting. And I think people are hurting a lot worse than the policymakers and the government statistics would suggest, because the real cost of living is going up much more. Frankly, I think we haven't come out of the recession of 2008, 2009 for most people. And so I think what's happening is I think the policymakers are really concerned that there could be this outbreak of violence and so forth. So I think they're spying on us, listening to us, watching us more closely than ever, throwing away liberties. The right of habeas corpus has been thrown out, first by Bush and now even more so by the current president. So, are you free to speak any longer? I think your freedom of speech is at risk, and that really would be the end of it, I think. And so it's really a very gloomy situation right now. But on the other hand, if the system falls and it breaks apart, I think that could be good, because as it's going now, it's a very evil system that doesn't allow people who work hard and are producers to reap the rewards. If traditionally, or what happens very often when there's a revolution is there's a vacuum, because the people who are in power are so hated they leave Dodge. And then what happens, if the right kind of people are ready to come in, if you can have people prepared, the right kind of people that love liberty and freedom, they can come in. We don't have to have a new document. We've got the Constitution right now, which I think is a perfectly fine document. The only problem is the policymakers haven't followed it. Very basic things like money is supposed to be, according to the Constitution, gold and silver. Or what about sending troops overseas? It's supposed to be declaration of war by Congress, but we're fighting wars all the time, big wars all over the world, and sort of trying to do regime changes and all this. None of that is constitutional. So I think it's powerful military-industrial interests that are behind that. Lots of people are making money from that, the bankers, the military-industrial complex, but the people are really getting hurt as a result of it. And if there is a revolution, then we can hope and pray for something better to step in, as happened in 1776. And honestly, I think we're back to quite almost where we were in 1776. No taxation without representation. Frankly, I don't feel that I have representation, and clearly the powers behind the throne, the people that finance these campaigns and so forth, have sway with the politicians. They're getting laws written in the books that give them an unfair competitive advantage in the market. That's basically what's going on now. So I think we're back to where we were before 1776, and I think Ron Paul wrote a book, Revolution. I think he would feel the same way, that's really, we're at the point where there needs to be a change if the people can wake up and realize what's happening to them. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't, but then I'm encouraged by young people like you who are out there talking about these issues and the internet, and Ron Paul goes to speak before crowds of 30,000 people at universities, 20,000. He always has a tremendous following, still now, and he is really elated and energized by the fact that young people are really understanding this message. So I think there's hope, but I think for things to get better, we also have to understand what the problems are. We have to wake up to the reality of it so we can prepare ourselves personally, financially, and spiritually, and many other ways to deal with the difficulties that might lie ahead.
So what are some specific ways that people can prepare?
Well, I think certainly people financially is to have real money, because the paper money that we have is highly suspect because it's being created in infinite amounts of it. So the price, the value of the paper, that's part of it is supply. A lot of it is just based on confidence. It's a con game, really, is what we have. And somebody here at the conference talked about petrodollars. Geopolitically, if things go the wrong way for the United States, there's nothing backing the dollar anymore. The confidence in the dollar could evaporate overnight. So I think owning real money, and I'm talking about gold and silver primarily, is the first place to go. I'd also say that the policymakers apparently are counting on a systemic breakdown, because the Bank of England and the FDIC have put together a white paper talking about bail-ins. And people don't realize when you put your money in the bank, you're an unsecured creditor. And an unsecured creditor, you don't really own that money. If the bank defaults, you could lose some or all of it. And we saw it play out in Cyprus, and I think they're getting ready to play it. I think, to me, this is the greatest evidence that we're in trouble, because the policymakers are writing white papers about how to deal with the next banking crisis. And so you prepare that way by frankly, putting some cash under the mattress. as long as the dollar holds together. You're going to need a certain amount of it in this day now. Dollars can be worth a lot. Put them in a safe place. Then I think if you're able to store food and water and things like that, it makes sense. Be as self-sufficient as you can be. It's a little difficult for me. I live in New York City. I'm not allowed to have a generator in my backyard and things like that. So, but I mean, for some people, it's moving to a safer location. I think one of the most important things to do is make sure you have friends and have people close to you, your family and people that can help each other out. Because in time of need, under tremendous stress, you're going to need people to care for, and people will care for you. So, to me, forming a community of people that understand what's going on is a very good strategy as well.
So, where can people find you on the internet then?
The best place to go to is J Taylor Media. That's JAYTAYLOR Media.com, and from there they can find out about my newsletter. It's called J Taylor's Gold, Energy, and Tech Stocks, and they can also tune into my live radio show every Tuesday between 3 and 5 in New York City. I'm on Voice America, but there's a radio button right on my website. They can just click on that and then download the podcast or listen to it live.
All right, Jay Taylor, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Go to financeandliberty.com and subscribe for free for more interviews and financial insight.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with Jay Taylor, and today we're at the Liberty Mastermind Symposium, and your talk was, I really liked your talk.
Thank you.
And you talked about how debasing currency might have a correlation with the morality of a society.
Right.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, sure. I think that, in fact, it was a history professor that I had back in 1967 and so forth are really taking away the wealth that's being created by, I like to say, the people that really create wealth are the miners, the manufacturers, the farmers, the inventors, people that do things that are really valuable. They aren't getting their fair share, and there's a redistribution of wealth from the producers to the people that sort of control the system. So I think Dr. Yoder was right. I think that we've seen a lot of now whether that was the cause of it or not, I mean, it's interesting. I had Robert Prechter on my radio show one time, and I asked Robert Prechter, I said, suppose that Nixon hadn't taken us off the gold standard in 1970. We did see all kinds of other sort of, I think, social declines in many ways. I think it might even transcend the economics and the work ethic, I think, because when people think they can have something for nothing, they start applying that to other areas of their lives. And so people think they can have maybe sexual freedom and so forth without any repercussions. And I think just people think they can sort of take advantage of each other, and especially if you're empowered with a lot of money. If you happen to be in those sectors of the society that benefit from fiat money, that would be like bankers and government. Of course, then the enormous growth in the money supply. Following that, of course, in 1971, Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard, and he did that because he didn't want to tax the people that pay for Vietnam. He didn't want to tax the people that pay for the Great Society. If he did that, he'd probably be tossed out of office. And so we did. I mean, we issued debt to pay for those things, and then the printing press to pay for it because they didn't want to tax people. So if you look at a chart, you go back to about 1971 or so, you see an exponential growth in the money supply in the United States. We did debase the currency. Who suggested that was true? He looked at history and thought that was true. So I started watching what was going on in 1967, 68, 69, the Vietnam War, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. And I saw that, we were printing money to pay for it, and we weren't going to tax the people and tell people that the war was going to cost them, that they were going to have to pay for the Great Society, but they could have something for nothing. And so that always, I think most of the time, a lot of people will, if you offer them something for nothing, they'll take you up on it. And that's what I think the whole system has been. We've